Greetings and salutations, guys. I hope you're all doing well today. Today I've got some Dogman encounters that just sent shivers down my spine. Before we get into these encounters, a couple links I'd like to share. The first link I'd like to share with you is Tromic's lead delivery system, home of the original 458 SOCOM owned by Tony Ramore, a true American. He designed an AR upper to be attached to your existing AR lower and blast 458 instead of 223 and 556. He designed this for our troops in the Middle East to stop truck bombs. Straight across the board, a 458 is going to stop a truck, it's going to slow down and stop a Dogman. Tromic's link is in the description below, and check out all his other amazing products. Now onto my links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, PayPal, and merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. I also started a GoFundMe page to help raise some money for urban exploration, cryptid hunting, and ghost hunting videos. So far, I have an SLS cam, an EVP recorder, and about 4 trail cams. If that's anything that you're willing to help with, that link is in the description below as well. Now, enough of this chitter-chatter. Let's get on with these Dogman encounters, shall we? Today's first Dogman encounter brings us to the great state of Texas, Freestone County, April 23rd, 2016. I was out at my grandparents' house hunting coyotes as usual this time of year. I was hiking through my next-door neighbor's land to get to a wood-covered land in the back. While I was hiking, I got the feeling I was being followed by something to my right. I stopped and switched the red tint on my headlamp to the spotlight, but didn't see anything. Then I switched back to my headlamp and pulled my rifle back up and continued my hike. It was 6:15 in the morning and the sun was just coming up. I was sitting in a hide I had made the day before. That's when I saw something behind a group of trees to my left. It was crouched. I raised my rifle and looked through my scope and froze when I saw a creature staring back at me. I panicked and fired a shot off. That's when it stood up and took off deeper into the woods. I sat there for another 25 minutes before I decided it was safe to head out, and did so. Later that day, I grabbed my grandfather and we both went out to where I had seen the creature when it stood up on 2 legs and took off. We measured what I had seen, and it was roughly 7.5 feet tall. To this day, I'm terrified to go out at night or in the early morning hours. Today's second Dogman encounter, Collin County, Texas, April 4th, 2018. I came back from work around midnight, and like most nights, I sat down on my back porch and lit a cigarette and relaxed. However, unlike most nights, I heard something new. I'm used to the coyotes and my neighbor's dogs barking, but in this case, it was definitely something unheard of before. It sounded like a deep howl, but instead of the usual dog sound, it stayed as one tone, and it was a deeper octave. I heard it go from backyard to backyard, and the neighbor's dogs took notice. The dog's barking triggered my dog to go run out to the fence line, and she began to bark at something unseen, at least from my vantage point. I got up and told her, "Hey, come back in here, girl, it's okay." She turned to me and sat there, utterly frozen in fear. It took a few minutes to break her out of this, and she bolted to the back door. I decided to poke my head out of the gate and look into the field behind the fence. By the tree line, I saw these amber-colored eyes standing about 5 feet above the ground. I decided to run in and took out my knife and walked out in the direction of the eyes. The whole time I walked, I heard the howls. However, though, when I got close to where I initially saw the eyes, every sound stopped. You could literally hear a pin drop. I didn't see anything, but I felt the presence of something watching me. After a few minutes, I walked back to the porch and sat down and had another smoke. It was then the howls started again. This time, they came from my neighbor's backyard. Now, they have 2 shepherds, and I'll never forget the sounds that I heard. The first was a guttural growl noise unlike anything heard before. Then one of the shepherds shrieked, and I heard another one get slammed against the fence. One thing led to another, and I heard my neighbor fire off a round, and then I heard this thing trail off. The next encounter was 3 days after. The howls started up again, but this time I heard them making its way through my tree line behind my house. I heard the thumping of the feet and the branches breaking, and my instincts kicked in to get cover, so I shut off the back porch light and allowed my eyes to adjust. There was enough light to clearly see the opening in the tree line that's about 2 of me wide and about 9 feet high. I watched in the direction where the noises were coming from, and then all of a sudden, I see it stand up. I first saw the ears tall and sharp like knives. I then saw its head, followed by the broad shoulders and long arms. It stood there watching me for what seemed like forever until it turned and ducked down a little and took massive strides on 2 legs and walked off. It's because of this I've been conducting an investigation on this thing. I learned that there's an encounter in Firestone County not very far from me. I hope to get some reasonable evidence soon. Today's third encounter brings us to Johnson City, Texas. After attending a matter in Austin during the day, I decided to camp out near Paternals Falls State Park, a private ranch that I won't name. Lady there is really nice, and I don't wish her any bad business. It was after dark, about 6:30, November 18th, 2016, when I was invited to explore and set up camp anywhere on the property. I went to the most isolated part in the back near a creek. Once in the area, I heard screams, maybe by people, approximately 2 males and 1 or 2 females. At first, I thought to myself, damn, I'm gonna have to hear these drunks yell all night and they'll blast off their primal scream therapy routine. They had set a campfire below next to the creek. I was about 150 yards away, high up near a ledge. The creek ran about 10 yards below me, and I caught a glimpse of their fire, but not the people. Only quick shadows darted past the flames. It was odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I proceeded to return to my area where I had parked my car and gather up some firewood. I ignored the screams that these folks were making, yet I noticed that I never once heard talking or voices commenting in normal language, just screams that kept getting more intense and strong and long in duration. Still, I didn't think of it being too weird. I kept about my business, trying to set up my camp and my tent in the dark. After struggling, flashlight in the mouth and knees scraped from lying out the bedding in the tent, I walked around enjoying the open view of the sky. By now, the screams had turned to barking and howling. Earlier, during my wood-gathering forage, I had heard someone walking in the darkness, and I assumed it to be a female person who had strayed from their perimeter to get to the bathroom. I spoke to the person in the dark, mentioning that I'd be setting up camp in the upper area from them. The person never answered, so I felt confident I had established a respectful territory mark, where I wouldn't go near them, and they in turn wouldn't come close to me. Nevertheless, I still didn't think anything was weird up to that point. What began to worry me was an hour later, as I was about to begin my fire and rest in my tent. 3 or 4 howls united into a very loud crescendo. That got my attention. The barking now was more intense and deeper. At first, I thought maybe these people were using dogs to fight each other, but it wasn't like that. In dogfights, you can listen to the dogs tearing into each other and the voices of the men cheering on. Here, the barking seemed to be going in one direction, as the dogs or coyotes were competing to outdo each other's barks, wailing and howling. As my mind tried to comprehend what was going on, another possible scenario appeared to my reasoning. Maybe they had set up speakers and were playing recorded barks and howls, but that made no sense. Once again, the barking deepened and the howling became more fierce and louder. That's when I decided that I wouldn't be able to sleep there at all. Besides, the sounds didn't appear to be human-based at all. I collapsed the tent I had struggled up almost an hour and left a stone ring and all the firewood at different lengths and thicknesses stacked up and ready. The sense of self-preservation came over me. I was alone, unarmed, except for a long, heavy machete I gripped with my right hand. Before leaving, I crept as far as I could to the ledge where I'd earlier seen their campfire, but the barking and howling was too great. I crept up quietly in defensive combat mode only 25 yards further. Didn't reach 50-yard mark at the ledge where I'd been 2 hours earlier. How I had wished I had my tape recorder box with batteries so my wife could have heard what I heard that night. Like I said, I couldn't get any deeper or closer to them because things voicing out in barks and howls were not people. I never saw them. Today's fourth and final encounter brings us to Oklahoma, Cleveland County, June 2000. I'd been up all night at a friend's house in the town of Tribby playing video games. I didn't want to sleep there, so I said goodbye and headed home. I knew my car was making funny noise, but I thought surely I could get home. While I was driving down a long dark stretch of highway with nothing but forest and a few sparse country houses, I was coming up to the top of a long hill when suddenly my car stops pulling forward. The engine revs, but no gears would engage. My CV joint just went out. I was hoping this wouldn't happen. Well, I had no way of getting home, so I backed up down the road in neutral and off onto the side. I thought about staying and sleeping in the car, but something told me not to do that. I had an eerie feeling of being watched. So I grabbed my video game case and my machete that I had made from a lawnmower blade and started walking. I started noticing the feeling of being watched, and it felt like I was being followed now. I kept looking behind me, but saw nothing, but when a car passed by, heading in the direction behind me, it illuminated the area with the headlights, and I saw something behind me in a ditch, hunched down low. It was huge, and I could tell it looked like an animal, but had humanoid features. It seemed to have arms, but its head was most definitely canine. Its head was very large, and its eyes glowed red when the lights hit them. Well, I've seen enough werewolf movies to know that this is not a good situation, so I started running. That probably wasn't the best choice, because I know predators like to chase things that run from them. When the car had passed, the creature had darted into the trees. I thought that was the best time to run, so I did. I ran for about a quarter mile and looked back but didn't see anything, so I kept walking. Well, I kept checking behind me and off to the side where the tree line was. I knew it was still out there and probably following me, and yeah, I was afraid. But I was also prepared to defend myself with my machete if need be. I came up to another hill and saw a farmhouse off into the distance to my left down a long dirt driveway. The moon was almost full and the area around the house was clear, so I could see a guy out there messing with his truck as I walked by. Then he turned on a spotlight on his truck and spotted me with it. I kept walking because his property said no trespassing, and many out there won't hesitate to unload on a stranger. I knew it was close again, probably closer now, and I was about to turn around and face it when another car came over the top of the hill and passed by me. Going behind me again, I followed with my eyes and noticed this time it was a cop. So thinking quickly, I dropped my machete on the edge of the grass and waved. As he passed, his lights hit the ditch as well, and I saw the Dogman was very close, but it darted into the trees again when the lights hit it. Thankfully, a moment later, the policeman stopped and turned around. He came back and asked me what I was doing out there, so I told him what had happened with my car. I didn't mention anything about the Dogman, though. He may have thought I was crazy, but I asked him for a ride home. He agreed after wanting to check and make sure my car wasn't blocking a road. After we checked it, he agreed to take me home. I don't know what might have happened that night if he hadn't shown up, but it was the one and only time I was genuinely happy to see a police officer. 4 amazing Dogman encounters. The first 2, God, they're only a couple of miles apart and a year apart. And I did that purposely because the second incident, the guy knew about the first one. So, kind of connection there. The third encounter was definitely crazy. You're hearing people screaming, there's a fire going on, then they're gone with all these howls and stuff. Just, even though you don't see them, you know it's there. The encounter that happened in upstate New York with a logger that I've communicated with multiple times, he knew, you didn't see it. And it was one of the most scariest encounters that I've read, because he's, 13, 14 on some rollerblades in the middle of upstate New York where they had just, there's nothing up there. Literally, it's state park. And so you know something's chasing you, and that's the scariest part about it. And then that brings us to the Oklahoma one. The guy knew something was chasing him. There's nothing you can do. You're on a lonely, deserted road. You've got a lawnmower blade machete, and this thing's stalking you. There's a reason why animals stalk. We all know it. It's either to watch you or get you. And it's going to wait for the most opportune time to get you. If it's watching you, it's going to stop after a while. It's not going to just keep going. So my guess is that thing would have caught up to him eventually and taken him out into those woods in Oklahoma, and he might not ever been seen again. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed these. I got some great encounters coming up. A person that knows Vic Cundiff sent me their encounter and has never shared it with anyone except me. That's quite an amazing thing. It's like the holy grail of Dogman encounters. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed these, and with that, I bid you farewell.